So let's see, I could put another deed in, I could put some of my dudes up. Yeah, I've got the attorneys here, which is quite cheap. It says raise or lower the bounty on a wanted dude by 1. And Marion Seville here, he gets +2 bullets when he's wanted. So I quite like to get this in so that I can boost up Marion. So let's do that. This is going to cost me 2 Ghost Rock. So let's put this over here. Pay the 2. That's me done. That gives me 1 more control. So a blue token over here. So he's drawn a diamond. Okay. Diamond is a little bit more straightforward. It says if Wyatt can afford to put the deed into play and it's not a duplicate of a unique already around, then he pays for it and does so. Now he can afford to pay. It costs 4. Well, if we go back to our rules, it says place to the left of or right of home according to which side has the lowest sum cost of deeds. So we've got 3 cost over to this side and 2 cost over to this side. So this is the lowest side at the moment. He's going to place it over here. You can't place it in between. Alright, it's always to the far left, far right. If that deed disappears for some reason, everything kind of squishes up towards home. So everything's relative to your home. Okay, now here, this gives him 1 more control. So it was a little bit of tit for tat there, wasn't it? He's getting a little bit closer to me. So what can I do in response? Now what I'd like to do, and one thing I've started to learn about the AI, and this is where I need you guys to come in and help me with playtesting, is that, you know, the best way for me, or an easy way for me to gain control, is to move guys across town and take control. I could move him straight across town booted, or I could move him into town unbooted. Let's do that. Let's do that. Then, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that and see what Clementine does. This is the thing about this game, is you can kind of take your time. You don't have to rush things. Okay, it's a diamond. It costs 3 Ghost Rock. Wyatt's only got 1, so he's not going to be able to afford to put the church into play, fortunately, because that's 2 control to him. So what does he do instead? So we'll go back to our AI. It says you can afford to put it in play. Now we can't move on. Move the highest cost dude from home to a deed in or out of town controlled by Wyatt with no dudes located there. Okay, so Lucy is the only dude at home. She's going to head over here. Now there's rules, remember, about moving. Wherever you move, you're going to boot. The only time you don't boot is when you're moving from home to town centre, like town square, like I did. Right, so Ramiro didn't boot because he was moving from home to town square. The other time you don't have to boot is if you're moving from home to an adjacent deed. So Lucy can't move to Pony Express without booting. Okay, so we put her sideways. Now I've got to keep an eye on Lucy, because what I told you is that Wyatt's not going to be using the text of his cards. Alright, there's different types of text on a card. These things here, like public, private, they're keywords. They stand, right? They're just a static keyword. There's other things that are kind of like are things you can take as an action, what we call acting. You'll see these. They have controller, noon, boot, right? So the controller can, during the noon, boot this card and take some action. Wyatt's going to ignore those because he can't take actions, all right? There's other things called reacting. So like react to something. So if it says react here, a situation occurs, you react to it. Again, Wyatt can't do that because he doesn't take actions. But Lucy here, she has some text. This is called a trait. Traits do still stand for Wyatt. And it says if your opponent in Lucy's shootout reveals a cheating hand, raise the bounty on each dude in their posse by 1, including from 0 to 1. Okay, so that will happen. All right, that's just a static trait that's going to happen. Whoever, whether it's Wyatt's card or my card, that's going to happen. And this is what helps the variant work, because you don't have to make any decisions for Wyatt. Everything's deterministic, and that's the point here. There's no trying to figure things out. Like, what would you do? What would you do if you were Wyatt? None of that business. All right, this is all deterministic. Wyatt's just following a set of rules. Okay, so Lucy's moved over there. And you can kind of see it feels kind of right, okay? And this is where I've kind of built the logic, really. You know, they brought a deed in, Lucy moved across to defend it. I'm going to go over here, hopefully. In fact, I'm going to do that right now, because one of the other movements you can do, as well as moving from home to town square, or from home to an adjacent deed, you can move from town square to a deed on any side of the town without booting. Right, so we're going to move Ramiro over there. Right, White's turn. There's another diamond. Okay, now we can't afford to put this one into play for White. It costs 3, he's only got 1. There aren't any deeds he controls without any dudes, so what was the next piece of logic? Okay, move the highest cost dude from home or town square, Clementine is here, to White's controlled deed. These are the deeds that White controls. At the moment, White controls all his deeds. With the lowest PD. Now what's PD? PD stands for power differential. Alright, and this is just a little trick that I've created. In fact, I should credit someone from Board Game Geek who put up his solo variant. Anyway, I'll put a link in the bottom so you can see I've a couple of ideas that have been discussed. I think are neat ideas and been working well. Anyway, power differential. This is my own definition of power differential. So this bit I kind of made up, but it's inspired by that solo variant. What I do is I look at the cost of the cards. So we've got 3 here, we've got 2 here. So at the moment the power differential is, for Wyatt, is -1 because he's got 2 minus 3. Alright, so the cost of his dudes minus the cost of mine at that location. But not just that, you always include, when you're calculating PD, any deeds who are in town square. Now as it goes, because I'm talking about all deeds in town, okay, the PD is kind of irrelevant because I'm just asking for the lowest, and Clementine's going to contribute to every single deed because she's in town square. So all I know is that the PD, each of my deeds is +5, +6, -1. Okay, because I've got a 5 here with nothing in return, nothing in response. 5 minus 0 is 5, 6 minus 0 is 6, 2 minus 3 is -1. The deed with the lowest PD, -1. So Clementine is coming over here, and because she can move from town square to a deed on either side of town without booting, she's moving there without booting. Again, the AI has caused Wyatt to respond to what I was doing. I've gone over here and lowered the PD of this location, which means that because Wyatt happens to have people here, he can move them in to defend. Alright? But that's fine. I'm going to call out, I think, because I could potentially put somebody else up into town square, but no, let's call out. I'm going to call out because I could potentially get rid of 2 of his dudes right now. So let's call out. So Ramiro Mendoza's going to call out Lucinda. Lucinda's booted. If the person you're calling out is booted, they can't decline. If they're not, they could decline. And I've got some logic here to determine. And it's based on PD plus the cost of the location. So it would actually have been 3 plus 2 plus 4, right? So that would have been 9. And if 9 is greater than 3, it is. If it's within 3, well, actually I've just said that every time I have the roll of a D3. If the sum of all these is greater than the cost of all these, plus anything that I've got in town square, then they would accept the call out. Okay, but as it goes, I'm calling out Lucy, so she's going to accept because she can't do anything other. And now we look at forming posses. Because I did the calling out, I'm what's called the leader. Alright, and the leader always forms their posse first. So I called out Lucy, so I have to form my posse. And I can form a posse of dudes from the location where we're having it, at the Pony Express here. And I can add any dudes that are in an adjacent location. So at the moment, home, challenge place, BB and attorneys are only adjacent to town square. Right? So this one's adjacent to this one's adjacent to this one, this one's adjacent to this one, and they're all adjacent to town square. So I can't move any of these dudes in because they're not adjacent to the Pony Express. If I had any dudes in town square, then I could move them in, but they would move in booted to join the posse. Alright, and that's why I was contemplating perhaps moving Marion up and then making him join. But I feel confident enough of what I've got, because what I want to try and do is to gain control of the Pony Express and then bring these other dudes in to do some other meanness over here. Now in terms of Wyatt, so I've formed my posse. There's this guy here. I've called out Lucy. Wyatt now has to decide who he's going to have join the posse. And again, we've got rules for this. So it says all available dudes will join Wyatt's posse from Town Square and from the Shootout location. So Clementine's joining the posse as well. Okay? But you'll notice Wyatt has another dude who's adjacent, so could potentially join the posse by booting. And that's Abraham Grove here at the railroad station. Right? These two dudes are adjacent to each other. Now, what the rules tell me is that Wyatt will move unbooted dudes at adjacent locations only if it will doing so will not immediately lose control. So he wouldn't move away from here if I had dudes here, because then I'd take control of the railway station. So he could still move across, but he'll only do that if the PD at the Shootout location is currently negative. So what's our PD? Remember, it's the card costs, right? So the PD is 3 plus 2 is 5 minus the cost of my dudes, 3. 3 plus 2 is 5, minus 3 is 2, that's positive 2, plus 2 PD. So the PD here is not negative. What that means is he still fancies his chances in this shootout. If he thought that if my posse was going to be stronger than his, then he might move Abraham across now to join the fight and try and help out. As it stands, he feels happy with who he's got there. Now, some people have observed that the cost of some of these dudes is higher just because they have some nice abilities that Wyatt can't use. Well, okay, that's just the nature of the game, alright? So Wyatt plays in this way and he's following these rules. Remember, he's not trying to follow the rules of a normal player. He's just presenting a situation to you. And in this situation, this is what the AI has decided he will do. Alright? It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to give you a playable opponent. And that's what he's doing. Okay, unfortunately, when Ramiro joins a posse, I've got to pay 1 ghost rock, so I'm going to pay that up. Ramiro here is a stud. He's got a silver bullet. If I compare that to, say, Marion, he's not a stud. He's got just a bronze-coloured bullet, all right, which is a draw. So he's a draw, he's a stud. And what does that mean? Well, to start with, and we always draw our hand first because we're going to have to make decisions about this before Wyatt. Okay, it doesn't matter if we're the leader or the winner or whatever. We're always going to draw our card first. We're having a shootout right now. So we're going to draw, right? Well, pistols are out and we're going to shoot. Okay, now to draw, we draw 5 cards. All right, this is a poker hand. 5 cards, always 5 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what a stud does is he counts the number of bullets. So Ramiro is a 3 stud. Okay, and get rid of this now. I was just using these tokens to mark who was in the posse. With a 3 stud, you're going to draw an additional 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now, if I had a draw, what that meant is, instead of, if he was if that was copper 3, what it meant is we'd take our 5 cards and we could try and draw. And let's say I decided to keep 2 5s, discard those 3 and draw 3 more to take me back up to 5. That's draw, right? You can draw up to 3. Well, he's a stud, and what that means is I get to draw them initially before I look, then I can decide to create my best hand, figure out how to create my best hand. All right, and if I had any more draws in the posse, then I'd be doing that now. I was hoping for a flush. I've got 4 spades and 4 clubs. That's not so good. In fact, this has not worked out very well. I think I'm looking at 2 pair. So I've got ace, king, 10. I've got 2 6s. I've got 2 5s. Yeah, that's a terrible hand. Aces are always low. So it's going to be... yeah, it's going to be 2 pair with a king kicker. And it's not a cheating hand. Alright? You'll notice with these cards that the pips and the suit might be the same on more than one card. I could have 2 Clementine leps and that would give me 2 aces of spades, and if I was using them, that would be a cheating hand. Alright, as it goes, I've got a non-cheating 2 pair. What about Wyatt? Wyatt's got to choose his shooter. Which one of his 2 dudes in the posse is going to be the shooter? It doesn't have to be the one that I've called out. And the rules tell us Wyatt picks his dude with the highest non-zero stud rating, or the highest draw if there's no stud. If there's a tie for highest, right, I've got 2 zeros, there is a tie for highest, then he uses a dude with the lowest cost. Okay, so Lucy's going to be Wyatt's shooter. And she's unfortunately got a 0 draw. But that doesn't matter, because Clementine is there in support. Now every support card is going to add 1 bullet to the fight, whether it's a stud or a draw. Now Clementine's a bronze bullet. It doesn't matter that she's got a 0 here, she's always going to add 1 draw to the shootout. If there was a silver bullet, then it would add 1 stud. Okay? Now, we can't do drawing for Wyatt, because we could just discard the best card and hopefully break up Wyatt's good hand. So every bullet, when Wyatt's playing in this solo variant, is going to count as a stud. But what we've said is that the draws, the copper bronze coloured bullets, are only half a stud. Okay, half a silver bullet. So that's how we've kind of balanced this out, if you like. And again, I'll credit that to the variant that I saw over on BGG. So Lucy's got 0, so she's not going to add any draw at all. Clementine's got half, so she's going to add half a bullet to the draw. But we always round up, so half is going to be 1. All right. So we've got our 5 cards. That's half a silver, which rounded up to 1 silver. That means we're going to draw 6 cards for Wyatt and form the best hand. And you must always form the best hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the best hand from this lot, she hasn't quite got a flush, she hasn't got straight. It's just 1 pair of aces with a queen kicker. Chuck in the 6. Right, that's the best hand. Yeah, queen 6 and queen 6 3. Doesn't matter. So we did manage to win. We won the fight with our 2 pair. Now we look at the rankings, the hand ranks, and this is where we work out casualties. So Wyatt got a pair. So 1 pair is a hand rank of 2. We've got 2 pair, and that's a hand rank of 3. Alright, and you count the difference. The difference is just 1. Alright, so she's got to take 1 casualty. So the casualty, these just get discarded now, by the way, these hands, they're not playing any more part. So 1 casualty's got to go. Now to soak up 1 casualty, you discard 1 dude. To soak up 2 casualties, you can send one of your dudes to boot hill. Alright, now remember, anything in your discard pile, when your deck runs out, is going to get reshuffled into your deck. If you take 2 casualties by sending one of your dudes off to boot hill, that soaks up 2 casualties, but they're gone from the game. Alright, for good. They don't go back into your discard pile. They can't reappear. So, Wyatt's got 1 casualty to soak up. So who does he decide to discard? Clementine or Lucy? And again, we've got a rule to cover that situation too. He will discard the lowest cost dude for 1 casualty, ace in for 2, then discard the next cost dude for a 3rd casualty, ace in for 4, and so on. Alright, so lowest cost dude is going to be discarded to soak up that 1. And this is why he's put the lowest cost dude as the shooter. Alright, we know that this guy's committed to the posse, or this gal, so she's going to get discarded. Clementine's left standing. And that's important for Wyatt, because who's got control of this deed is the player with the highest influence. We've both got 1 influence. Ramiro's got 1, Clementine's got 1. Okay? The difference is that if in the case of equality, it's the owner, whoever owns the deed, breaks the tie. Okay? So Wyatt still has control of this deed, but he's lost Lucy for 2 influence. So we're going to take 2 away from here, and we're a little bit closer to having more control than Wyatt has influence.